Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Kavinsky's Tutorials. Today I'm finally getting around to doing something which viewers have been asking me to do for months, and that is to do a walkthrough of AUM. AUM is an absolutely brilliant app. It is pretty deep. If you look at the manual, it's very long. And I'm not going to try and cover every little detail in this, but it's definitely more than just a complete beginner's one. I think even if you're the sort of intermediate user, there might be some useful things for you here that you've missed out on. Let me just mention very quickly a few of the things that I'll go into. We'll look at simple things, for example, just how to load instruments, how to load FX, how to move things around. We'll look at starting an audio channel, a MIDI channel, look at importing from other things. We'll look at how to use the file player. One more advanced thing, which I think is extremely useful, is I will look at how to set up things like an LFO, for example, to modulate an FX or a synth app and stuff like that. And many other things. Basically, I'll look at everything that you need, all the basics. So if you're new to AUM, I would strongly recommend you watch this video the whole way through and probably several times, because it might be a bit much to digest in one go. Another thing I would mention is that at times you may feel that it goes a little bit quickly for you. Well, remember that YouTube has a half speed thing. You can go into your YouTube settings and you can change it so you can play things back more slowly. You can pause, you can repeat, and so on. I don't want to go at a snail's pace because everybody's at different levels. You know, some people need something very slow. Some people can take something that's a little bit faster. So remember, the YouTube speed adjustment setting is your friend in this instance. Very important thing I need to mention. If you're watching this in the first 2 days of release of the video, you have a chance to win any of Kymatica's apps. So Kymatica is the developer of AUM. So you've got a chance to win AUM if you don't have it already, but if you already have AUM, you can win any other Kymatica app. So you can just go to the App Store and look what other apps are done by this developer. And all the details for what you need to do to win are in the pinned comment at the top of the YouTube comments section. And if you're watching this after the first 2 days have passed and you've missed the chance to win, I strongly suggest you subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. I almost always have free copies of apps to give away when I make a video. If you win, by the way, I will send you a reply directly to your comment in YouTube, and I'll also change the YouTube pinned comment after people have won. I'll change it to add the names of the winners there. So if you haven't heard from me in a few days and you're curious whether you won or not, just come back and look at that pinned comment. Okay, let's get started here. So the first thing you're probably going to want to do when you get AUM, before you do anything else, you're probably going to want to open up a synth or some other kind of instrument. So let's look at that. So first thing I do here, you'll see that we have this plus sign here. So I click on this and we see audio, MIDI, and import. So let's go to audio, and a new channel has opened up here. So now this is called channel 1, and you see it has a 1 here, and this is channel 2. Okay, now we click here, and let's go with a few things we can do. One thing is if we pull down here, a search bar will pop up, and this is extremely useful. So you can just search for an instrument by name. So that's one thing we can do. So let's say I want to search for geoshred, I just start typing and it pops up and I can select that. That's one way we can choose an instrument. Now another thing we can do is, if we look here, for example, hardware input, I can choose my mic input. Go here, audio unit. Now let me explain first, if you're a real iOS newbie, this is really important information. There are two main types of apps. Well, there are three actually. So one is audio unit format, one is inter-app audio, and then there's a third kind, which is neither of those. Like for example, if you take Flip, which was released recently, that app is neither inter-app audio nor is it audio unit extension. You can't load it in a host like this. So to be able to be loaded in a host like this, an app has to be Interapp Audio or Audio Unit extension. And most people would prefer to buy audio units. When I first got into iOS, I did not understand the difference between these. And a lot of the apps I bought were Interapp Audio, including some FX apps and things like that. It's really not as useful. Audio Unit, you can open up multiple instances in a host. With Interapp Audio, you can only open up one instance, so that is not as flexible. The second thing is that if you open an Interapp Audio unit in AUM, when you open that, if you close and if you save or whatever that AUM session, if you open it up again in the future, it will not remember, for example, what preset you were using in that Interapp Audio app. But if it's an audio unit extension, usually it should remember all that information that will be saved in your session. So this is one of the reasons that people vastly prefer audio units to Interapp Audio. So let's go to audio unit extension. And let's choose, let's see. Okay, let's just choose Module Pro, Korg Module Pro. Okay, so you open up your synth. Now, at the bottom of the screen, we have a keyboard, but I'm pressing on the keyboard and nothing is happening. That is because we need to route the keyboard to this instrument. So how do we do that? You can see here we have these three little things. That's called a hamburger menu. We click on that, and then we have here MIDI sources. Now we'll come back and look at this maybe later, but for now, let's just concentrate on the keyboard. I click keyboard, and now, if I play on the AUM keyboard, it is going into this instrument. Now, by the way, if I have several instruments opened up here, let's say, for example, I open up another thing. Let's choose. Okay, let's choose this Tuxim World Synth. Now, if I click here and click keyboard, you see here, now it's going into both. Now, what if I only wanted to go into one? Well, one thing I can do is I can just take the keyboard away here. So now it's just going into Tuxim. Another thing is if we click on this MIDI routing thing here, this is another way that we can route MIDI. So you can see here on the top we have our inputs. So these are the things that are sending MIDI. And then over here we have our outputs. These are the things that are receiving MIDI. So we can see at the moment this keyboard is sending MIDI to World Synth. It's easy to remember what's input and what's output. If you think about it, you know, normally we think, if you're a Westerner at least, you think in terms of moving from left to right, okay? So these things are more on the left side of the screen, aren't they, right? If we divide the screen, these are on the left and these things are on the right. So just remember, these are inputs, these are outputs, easy as that. So we can also just click here. For example, if I click on this, then now it's going to both of those, right? If I clicked here, it's going to this one too. If I click here, it's going to this as well. All right. So this MIDI routing is useful. It's not just useful for routing keyboards, it's useful for routing any kind of MIDI you're sending. Okay, so let's get rid of this. Okay, so you've got your synth or whatever, your drum machine or whatever it happens to be. So let's say now the next thing you might want to do is add some FX. Now this already has some FX on it, but let's take something. So here we have what is called an FX slot. So I can click on this, and again, I can choose it. Audio unit extension or Interapp Audio or whatever. There are also a lot of other things that I could choose here. We'll maybe look at some of those things later. So I'll go to audio unit extension once again and choose something. Let's choose pan station. So this is an auto panner app. Let's choose this one here. Okay. So you hear how that is panning. Now, what if I want to add another FX? What I do here is on this same line, I just click on the line and another one of these little slots will open up. And then I click on the slot. Again, I'll go to audio unit extension and I'll choose another app. Let's say this reverb. Okay, first I'm going to go in here. I'm going to turn the reverb off inside this synth. Just turn the reverb mix down. And here, let's see. This is a really, 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 really nice impulse response loader. Okay, so we can just line up effects as many as we like. So then another thing we can do is, let's say, for example, I decide, you know what, I don't want to use this synth after all. Okay, so how do I get rid of it? I press on it and I drag to the left, and then I eject. And now I can open a different instrument instead. So let's choose house, for example. Now again, I'll click on this keyboard here. This is also another way that I can link the keyboard to it. Okay, so that is how we load an instrument, and that's how we chain FX. Now, by the way, I can also just move these around. So let's say I want the panning after the reverb. I just bring it over. And this can really matter sometimes, because if you take something like, say, saturation. Okay, now, by the way, this is an important button as well. So when we click something up, not every app will have this, but a lot of them do. Here, for example, in this app, if I want to choose presets, I can do it here. Or I can just do it within AUM's own preset menu. So I click on this little thing here and choose, say, this one. Now, with something like a saturator, you can hear the tone is different. You know, with effects, it's going to change the sound depending on the order you put them in. For example, a reverb before a delay will sound different to a reverb after. Another thing we might want to look at is what's called the transport. So if we look at the top, we can see here we have this BPM. We also have a rewind, a pause, and a record button here. So let's take a little look at that. Now, I'll take this off first. Take that off as well. Now leave that on. Okay. All right. So let's say I open. Okay. Let's look at MIDI first, actually. So click here again. Let's open up MIDI, and let me open up, let's say, an arpeggiator. Okay, I've got arp bud here. So an arpeggiator, what does an arpeggiator do? That will basically break a chord into individual notes. I'll let you hear in a second. I need to line it up first. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we want to send MIDI from this into this house Mark 1. So I click again on the hamburger menu, and then I choose as my MIDI source arp-bud2. Okay, that's the first thing I do. Now, I need to, because this is an arpeggiator, I need to put note information into this as well. So here I will click on this, and then I'll click here on the keyboard, and now see, so the order we've got is the notes I play on the keyboard are going into this, and they are being arpeggiated in here. I'll just draw some notes in. Okay, they're being arpeggiated in here, and then that's being sent to this. So let's say I don't like that speed. Let's say I want to slow it down. So I go up to the top left, BPM, press on it, and then I can do a few things. One thing is I can tap on it and I can type the value in. Another thing I can do is just drag down to slow it down, or drag up. All right. Now another thing we can do is we can tap a BPM. Another thing we can do is turn on a metronome here. Now there are some other things here connected to time signature and so on. I'll leave you to explore those yourself. Ableton Link is an important one to point out. You may need to sync the BPM of different apps. Ableton Link is one good way to do that. Some apps don't take Ableton Link. They use MIDI clock, for example, polyphase. So this MIDI clock might also be something that you need to set up. One important control I think here is the metronome level. So you can change how loud it is. Generally, I like it very quiet. Okay, so let's pause that. Okay, so what have we looked at so far? How to set up a synth, how to add FX to a synth, how to open up a MIDI app, and then how to route the MIDI from that app to another app. Now, here, because this was an arpeggiator, I needed to route some notes into it, but that is not the case with all MIDI apps. So let's add another MIDI app. So I just here again, I just click, right? I just click and these icons will appear. So let me go in here, let me drag down, let me search. Let me search, for example, for Rosetta Collider. So this is a generative MIDI app that does not need any input. But what is important is that the transport needs to be running for both of these apps. If the transport is not running, these will not make any sound. Right, so if I pause this, this has stopped arpeggiating. Now, some arpeggiators will arpeggiate whether the transport is running or not. For example, iOS, but most do not. So if you're doing something and you're not getting any sound, this is always a good thing to check. Is the transport running? There's a real rookie mistake thinking, what the hell is going on here? And then you realize, oh, damn, okay, I forgot to press play. So one thing I can do to bypass this is I can just pull it over here. So now if I press the transport, it's not going to do anything. Now, when I put it back in here, it's also not going to do anything. I need to actually re-enter these notes. Now, another thing I'll just mention while we're talking about entering notes is this button here. So this is the infinity button. So that basically will hold notes. You can also access this to tweak, what the keyboard is going to. So I can add it to more than one instrument at a time. Here, by the way, is where we slide so now I can move the keyboard around, but you may not want that to be like that all the time because it's easy to make mistakes while playing. So if you deselect that, then the keyboard will not move when you're pressing it. Okay, so let me just bypass this again. And let's look at Collider. So you see, I've loaded Collider, but it's not making any noise, right? Why is that? That's because we have not routed it yet, right? So just think to yourself, what do we need to do now? Do you remember? So basically, if I want to route it here, I need to go up here, go to this hamburger menu again, and I can choose Rosetta Collider. Now you can see here, because that's flashing, it's showing that that is actually sending some MIDI data. Okay, so now Collider is sending out MIDI. And again, if I want to change the speed of this and so on, I can do it here. Okay, so I think you've got a pretty decent grasp there of sending MIDI from one thing to another. Now, another very useful thing to look at is using LFOs. So let's look at how to do that. This is something that a lot of more experienced users really, really love to do. And this is so useful to learn. Okay, let's just take Red Shrike, for example. Okay, so I'm going to set up the keyboard again, right? So remember, hamburger menu, set keyboard input. Or we could actually set our bud maybe. We can let's set Rosetta Collider. So again, why is there no noise? Transport is not running. Okay, now we don't need this yet. So what I'm going to do here, let's see, let's take that off. This has its own reverb. Okay. So I'm going to set up an LFO to modulate something in this. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click on my favorite LFO app, which is called MIDI LFOs. Okay, so this again is not going to do, you can see that it's doing things, but it's not doing anything, because first thing I need to do is I need to set this up that it's going to take the data from this. Now, the LFO is I'm going to set that up in a slightly different way. So what I'm going to do is click here. Now, I'm using a beta version of AUM, which has a very small, a couple of small but very, very useful differences from the regular version. So this may not be in your version. So I'm going to look at it the old way of doing it first. So let's just click on the bottom of this channel, and I click here on these little faders icon. I go to MIDI sources. If this is too fast for you folks, just rewind back the video. You know, people will be watching these of all different kinds of levels. So for some people, it's going to need to be slower. For some people, that speed would be too slow. So YouTube, you can change the speed, right? For example, you could play this back at half speed. Don't forget, you can do that on YouTube if it's too fast for you. Or you can play it back faster, whatever. Okay, so here I choose MIDI LFOs. So now I go back, or I go up here, I click on this, I go back, and I'll go into Red Shrike and click on Parameters. And let's get... Let's just get something that's going to be very obvious. This is not going to be musically interesting, maybe, but let's just choose Master Volume. Now, here is where I set the MIDI channel, and you're going to have to look at the LFO that you're using, what it sends on. So click here, channel 1. I think if I remember, MIDI LFOs is 46, the CC. We'll check that in a second, and I can change it anyway if that's wrong. So I'm going to send MIDI into this on CC46 on channel 1. Okay, so yeah, CC46 channel 1, okay. So you see here how this volume is being controlled now by this LFO. And then in the LFO, I can do things like change the rate. Now, a real classic use of an LFO for this kind of thing would be, for example, to modulate filter cutoff. But there are so many creative uses of LFOs. This is really, really incredibly useful. Okay, let's look at another thing. Let's look, for example, at how to record. Okay, so let's I'll take the LFO off first. Just change this. This is horrible, actually. Collider can be really beautiful, but that is not interesting. Let me just play a few notes in. Again, this is not a musical video today. Most of my videos, I'm kind of using a lot more, say, pieces that I've made or whatever. This one is very, very much just like a video replacement for a manual. Okay, so let's say we want to record something. So what I do first, I need to arm the record on the channel I want to record from. Let's say I want to record from this. You're probably going to want to have your volume up. So I press R here, but it's still not going to record yet. There's two things I need to do. First thing, I need to check that this is running. So here we see the pause button. That means it is playing. If I press this, now it is paused. And you can see it's paused because this little thing is not moving. Now it's playing. Next thing I need to do is press record. Now over here, I have set it up so that it's going to sync to a bar, so it won't record until the start of the next bar. So let's just let it play. Okay, I press record. I'm going to put on the metronome also. I have to put up the BPM. So you see that's flashing. And so now it's recording. You can see this is solid, so it's recording. And so now I've turned that off, so the recording has stopped. And I can turn off the metronome first of all. And then I can disarm this if I no longer need it. And then here, I'll go up here. I click here and I go to Files. And I'm not sure also if this is in the App Store version of the app. This is a recent update where this is now divided into sessions and recordings. So here I'm going to click on recordings. And this is this recording. And here is the little thing that we just recorded. We can check it out here. Right. So that's that. Now, while we're in the Files menu, let's look at a few other things. So when you open up a new instance of AUM, for example, you're probably going to want to open up a file that you saved before. And we'll look at also how to save files and things like that. So to open our save files, we click on this. And if I want to save this session, I just click this Save button. And then I can give it a name here. And let's just call it Test. And if you want, you can organize things by folders as well. And then I just press Save. And I've already got one called Test. Do I want to overwrite it? Well, I don't need to save this, so I'm just going to say no. But if you wanted to save this, you would just press yes, or you would change the name or whatever. Okay, so that's how we save. So what if you want to open a session? You go into Files, and at least in this current version, you click on Sessions, and then choose one of these. Now, I'm not going to load it because if I do, it'll cut off my microphone. So this is very important. Another thing we can do here is clear. So clear will just clear this and we'll be left with a blank screen. This is also very useful. We can write notes about our session in here. If you write a note, do remember to save it. Those notes are not automatically saved. There are also a lot of settings here, and okay, there's a bunch of different stuff that I'm not going to go into. The only thing that I'm going to look at is how to connect a Bluetooth keyboard. I think that's a very important thing for people to know. So I'm going to turn on here my Rolly keyboard. So you've got to make sure you turn on your Bluetooth keyboard first. Then I press Central here, and you see here, because my keyboard is on, and of course Bluetooth must be on, this keyboard is popping up here as an option for me to connect to it. I click here, and now my keyboard is connected. So if I'm now playing on my keyboard, nothing is happening. Why is that? Well, because again, I need to route the keyboard to an instrument. So let's again go here, okay, Red Shrike channel. Let's click on the hamburger menu. And now you can see I'm pressing on the keyboard, so you can also see that this is the keyboard, and you can see when I press on it that this little thing is lighting up, which means it's sending out MIDI. So I click on this. Weird, I don't know why it's making that noise. Let's see. Let's open up something else. It's very strange. Let's try this house. It was because the keyboard was set for a very low octave. Okay, right. So now that's how you set up a Bluetooth keyboard and attach it to an instrument. I've looked at most of the things that I wanted to look at, actually. Let's see, is there anything else super important? Well, I want to mention something that could actually save you a lot of money if you realize it early on, because a lot of people don't really realize that AUM has quite a few little things of its own, little effects of its own that you can use for free. So if we click on stereo processing, for example, here we can load little things like, for example, we can choose, stereo to mono or different kinds of stereo processing. For example, a panner. Okay, so here we have a panner. So here everything will be panned to the left. Let's attach the keyboard here again. Right, you hear that's panned to the left. Now it's panned to the right. So we have a few different stereo processing things in there. Here we have some different filters and EQs, okay, so it's very useful. So this is the kind of thing a lot of people would buy apps for when they first get started, and you might not need them yet. You try and see if you can get along with these, see if they'll do the things you want. It even has, saturation and stuff in there. But obviously there are a lot of advantages to getting more specialized FX. Okay, now this is a bit more of an advanced one, but actually it's extremely useful, and I think a lot of people don't know how to do this when they get started, and it's really useful. So let's look at buses. So let's say I have a couple of instruments. Okay, let's say I'll just open up something else. Okay, so let's just say I open up another Red Shrike. Okay, well, let's say I want to process this and this with the same reverb, for example, right? So I might want to send them together to one channel, and then on that channel I add my FX. Instead of putting, the same FX on this channel and that channel, that will run up my DSP, right? And if I put too much stuff in my session, I might start getting clicking and things like that. So we can set up a bus. So to do that, I click here. I click on Mix Bus, and I'm just going to choose Mix to Bus A. And here also, I'm going to choose Mix to Bus A. Okay, now one thing, see, if I play here, nothing's happening. Why? Because you're hearing the audio from my headphones, right? So this is going to bus A, but there is no bus A to receive that. So what I need to do is I need to click on another channel, and I click on audio, and here I click, and here we can go to mix bus. So I click on mix bus. Now I click on receive from bus A. Okay, and see, now both of these are sending their audio here. So any FX, etc., that I add here can be will process both of these instruments. By the way, another thing is that you can also put a send in the FX slot here. So you can use this to process things as a send instead of an insert. I won't go into that here. If you can look up online if you're not sure what is the difference between send FX and insert FX. But just to show you that this is how you would do that. Okay. I realize another thing that will be useful, very useful actually, is I go to audio. I click here, file player, tap to load a file. Now to share with AUM, I use an app called Audio Share. I'd strongly recommend taking a look for that on the App Store and reading up about why that is so useful. Okay, let's see. Let's take one of Heimbach's loops. I'll go in here. Okay, let's see. One thing I can do is I can preview this by pressing this play button, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to click on it. And you can see it's opened up already. Here I can press this to make it loop if I want, and I can also press here to make it sync with the BPM in my host. And of course, we can add FX and so on in here on top of that if we want to. Okay, there's one more thing I want to look at. By the way, everybody, if you found this video useful, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel and so on if you haven't subscribed yet. The notification bell is very useful because I usually have free codes to give away. And if you hit the notification bell, then YouTube is going to notify you, so you're less likely to miss out on the chance to win free apps. Okay, so the last thing I want to look at is importing. So, okay, let's clear this channel. So how do we clear a channel? I click on the name of the channel, and then, okay, this is one thing I can do. One thing I can do is I can duplicate channels. That can be very useful, actually. So we can duplicate or we can remove. So let's remove. Okay, so I click here. I can import things from another session. So to do that, I just press import, and then it will basically take me to the file menu, and I can, this also has a search bar now. It maybe doesn't in the App Store version, but I'm sure this will be coming soon. If it's not available yet, this is a beta feature. Actually, something I requested, and I'm really happy Jonathan added it. Sorry, Jonathan. I should pronounce his name right. So let's say, for example, I go in here, and I could import this Swam flugelhorn, for example. Sorry. Okay, so you see, initially everything is selected. So I have a choice. Either here I can select all or none. So if you have everything selected, you can import everything. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to select none, and then I'm just going to go back and just choose one channel, and then I'll go down again, and I'll just import one channel. And then it's going to bring that in. By the way, in the session that I imported from, let's say, for example, this had some MIDI or whatever mapped to it. It wouldn't have that when you import it into this one. You're going to need to do any MIDI mapping you want to do from scratch. By the way, these are really, really incredible, and they're on public beta at the moment. I strongly recommend you Google Swarm, or the company's called Audio Modeling, Swarm Audio Modeling Public Beta. See if you can still get on the beta for these. These are incredible. They'll be coming out at some point soon. I wouldn't hold your breath. There's been a lot of delays in these coming out, but it should be well worth the wait. And certainly I'll be reviewing them at the time, and we'll probably have free copies to give away. These are expensive apps, so another good reason to subscribe to the channel. All right, everybody. So I think we really covered a lot there, actually. This will be so useful. I mean, I wish I had had a video like this when I started in AUM. It took me a long time to figure out all the stuff that I've told you today. So, yeah, lucky you, lucky you. All right, everyone, I'll see you in the next video, and thanks again for watching. Please do remember, give this a thumbs up if you found it useful, subscribe, etc., etc. It really does help the channel out. Also, my PayPal and other details are in the pinned comment. You know, if you're feeling generous, donations very gratefully received. All right, folks, take it easy. See you in the next video.